I'll never forget the moment my mother's words cut through the air like a blade I never saw coming. "Thessaly, pack your things. Aurelia needs this house more than you do." I stood there in my own living room, the one I'd spent 3 years renovating with my own money, my own sweat, and stared at her like she'd just announced the sky was falling. My father, Bernard, stood behind her with his arms crossed, that stern expression he always wore when he wanted to intimidate someone into submission. "Excuse me," I managed to choke out. "You heard your mother," Bernard said, his voice gruff. "Your sister is getting married in 6 months. She and Colton need a proper home to start their family. This place is perfect." Perfect. The word echoed in my head like a sick joke. Perfect because I'd made it that way. Perfect because I'd poured $70,000 of my own money into transforming this dilapidated wreck into something beautiful. Perfect because it was mine. "This is my house," I said slowly, trying to keep my voice steady. "I bought it. My name is on the deed." My mother, Francine, waved her hand dismissively like I was speaking nonsense. "Don't be ridiculous, Thessaly. Your father and I helped you with the down payment. That makes it a family property. Besides, Aurelia is the baby of the family. She deserves this more than you do. You're 32 years old and single. What do you need a 4-bedroom house for?" The audacity of her statement hit me like a physical blow. Yes, they'd given me $15,000 toward the down payment 3 years ago. A gift, they'd called it. A birthday present combined with a thank you for taking care of them when Dad had his accident. Never once had there been any mention of strings attached. Never once had they suggested this money came with conditions or ownership stakes. "That was a gift," I said, my voice rising despite my best efforts to stay calm. "You told me it was a gift. I've paid every single mortgage payment myself. I've paid for every renovation, every repair, every upgrade. I have the bank statements to prove it." Aurelia emerged from the kitchen where she'd apparently been listening the whole time. My little sister, 26 years old, with her perfect blonde hair and her perfect smile and her perfect life that everyone always bent over backward to maintain. "Come on, Thess," she said, using the nickname she knew I hated. "Don't be selfish about this. Colton and I need more space than my apartment, and houses in this neighborhood are way out of our budget. You can find another place. You don't have a fiancé to think about." The entitlement in her voice made my blood boil. Aurelia had always been the golden child, the one who could do no wrong, the one whose needs somehow always trumped everyone else's. When we were kids, I'd given up my bedroom so she could have the bigger one. I'd worked through college while they paid for her entire education at a private university. I'd driven a beat-up sedan for years while they bought her a brand new car for her 21st birthday. But this was different. This wasn't a bedroom or a car. This was my home, my investment, my future. "I'm not giving you my house," I said firmly, looking at each of them in turn. "This isn't up for debate. This property is in my name only. I have the deed, the mortgage papers, everything. You have no legal claim to it." Bernard's face turned an alarming shade of red. "Legal claim? You're going to talk to us about legal claims? After everything we've done for you? We raised you, fed you, clothed you, put a roof over your head for 18 years. We gave you money when you needed it. And this is how you repay us, by throwing the law in our faces." "I'm not throwing anything in your faces," I said, trying desperately to make them understand. "I'm grateful for everything you've done for me, but this house is mine. I worked overtime for 2 years to save for the down payment, even before you gave me that money. I've paid $37,000 in mortgage payments. I've put another $70,000 into renovations. This represents every bit of savings I have. You can't just give it to Aurelia because it's convenient." Francine's eyes welled up with tears, her favorite manipulation tactic. "I can't believe how selfish you've become, Thessaly. Your father and I didn't raise you to be this way. Family helps family. Aurelia is about to start her life with a good man, and you want to stand in the way of her happiness." "I'm not standing in the way of anything," I protested. "She can buy her own house, find a rental, live with Colton in his place. There are 1,000 options that don't involve taking my home." "Colton's apartment is tiny," Aurelia whined. "And we can't afford to buy in this neighborhood. Thess, you know how important this wedding is to me. How can I plan a future with Colton if we don't have a proper home? You're being incredibly selfish." I looked at my sister, really looked at her, and saw a stranger. Someone who genuinely believed she was entitled to everything I'd worked for simply because she wanted it. Someone who had never been told no in her entire life and couldn't comprehend why that might change now. "Get out," I said quietly. "What?" Francine gasped. "Get out of my house, all of you, right now." Bernard stepped forward, his jaw clenched. "You don't mean that." "I absolutely mean that. This is my property, and you're no longer welcome here. Leave, or I'll call the police and have you removed for trespassing." The silence that followed was deafening. Francine looked like I'd slapped her. Aurelia's mouth hung open in shock. Bernard's hands curled into fists at his sides, but even he knew I was within my rights. "You'll regret this," Bernard finally said, his voice low and threatening. "You think you can just cut us out? You think you can turn your back on your family? You're making a huge mistake, Thessaly. The only mistake I'm making is letting you stay another minute. Leave. Now." They left, but not before Aurelia shot me a look of pure hatred and Francine delivered one final blow. "Don't bother calling us when you need something. As far as we're concerned, you're no longer part of this family." The door slammed behind them, and I stood alone in my house, my sanctuary, my home, feeling like I'd just survived a natural disaster. My hands were shaking. My heart was racing. But underneath the shock and the hurt, there was something else, a grim determination. If they wanted to play this game, I was ready. Over the next 2 weeks, my phone exploded with messages. Relatives I hadn't heard from in years suddenly had opinions about my selfishness. My Uncle Preston called me an ungrateful daughter. My Aunt Delphine sent me a 5-paragraph text about family values. Cousins I barely knew commented on social media about how disappointed they were in me. The narrative my parents had spun was clear. I was the villain, the selfish older sister who refused to help her sweet younger sister in her time of need. They conveniently left out the part where they'd tried to steal my house. They didn't mention that I'd paid for everything myself. They painted themselves as generous parents betrayed by their ungrateful daughter. My best friend, Reverie, was the only person who knew the whole truth. She'd been there through the entire house-buying process, had helped me paint walls and install fixtures, had celebrated with me when I'd finally made the last major renovation payment. "They're insane," she said when I told her what had happened. "Completely insane. You need to protect yourself, Thess. These people aren't going to stop." She was right. 3 weeks after the initial confrontation, I received an official-looking letter in the mail. My stomach dropped when I saw it was from an attorney's office, Whitmore and Associates. Inside was a legal demand letter. My parents were suing me for unjust enrichment and breach of oral contract. They claimed the $15,000 gift had actually been a loan with the understanding that the house would be family property available for use by any family member who needed it. They wanted me to either transfer the deed to Aurelia or pay them back the $15,000 plus 3 years of interest, which they'd calculated at 15% per year, bringing the total to nearly $23,000. I read the letter 3 times, each time feeling a new wave of disbelief and rage. They were actually doing this. They were taking me to court over a house that was legally, unquestionably, entirely mine. I called Reverie immediately. "They're suing me." "What?" I read her the letter, my voice shaking with anger. "They're claiming the down payment money was a loan, not a gift. They're trying to say we had some kind of oral agreement about family property rights. It's complete fiction. Do you have anything in writing? Anything that proves it was a gift?" I thought back to that day 3 years ago, my birthday dinner at their house. Bernard handing me an envelope with a check inside. "For your new house," he'd said. "We're so proud of you, sweetheart." Francine hugging me, saying it was the least they could do after I'd taken time off work to help when Bernard had his accident. "A birthday card," I said suddenly. "They gave me a birthday card with the check. I kept it because it was sentimental. Let me find it." I tore through my filing cabinet, my hands fumbling with folders until I found the one labeled personal. And there it was, a blue card with "Happy Birthday, Daughter" on the front. I opened it with trembling hands and read Francine's handwriting. "Dearest Thessaly, we're so proud of the woman you've become. Please accept this gift toward your new home. May it bring you as much joy as you've brought us. All our love, Mom and Dad." "I found it," I told Reverie, reading her the message. "It specifically says gift." "That's perfect. Get yourself a lawyer, Thess, a good one. And whatever you do, don't respond to anything directly. Let your attorney handle everything." I hired Fletcher Garrison, an attorney who specialized in family law and property disputes. He was expensive, but Reverie assured me he was worth every penny. When I showed Fletcher the birthday card, the deed showing my sole ownership, and my bank statements proving I'd paid for everything else, he actually smiled. "This is going to be easier than I thought," he said. "They don't have a case, not even close. That card alone destroys their entire argument, but I want to gather everything just to be thorough. Get me copies of every mortgage payment, every renovation receipt, every bit of proof that you've been the sole financial contributor to this property." I spent 2 days compiling everything. Bank statements showing monthly mortgage payments from my account only. Receipts for the new roof, $18,000. The kitchen renovation, $22,000. New HVAC system, $12,000. Bathroom remodels, $15,000. Hardwood floors throughout, $16,000. New appliances, $8,000. Fresh paint inside and out, $4,000. Landscaping, $5,000. The numbers went on, a testament to 3 years of hard work and financial sacrifice. Fletcher reviewed everything with a careful eye. "This is excellent. You've got documentation for everything. Did you pay contractors directly, or did any money go through your parents?" "Every payment came from my account directly to the contractors or home improvement stores. My parents never touched any of it. They weren't even involved in most of the renovation decisions." "Perfect. And the mortgage is in your name only?" "Yes, they didn't co-sign. The bank approved me based on my income and credit score alone." Fletcher leaned back in his chair. "Ms. Carrington, I'll be honest with you. Your parents' attorney is either incompetent or desperate. This case is frivolous. The birthday card proving their money was a gift, combined with your sole ownership and sole financial responsibility for the property, makes their claim baseless. I'm going to file a motion to dismiss and a counterclaim for attorney's fees." When people file frivolous lawsuits, they can be ordered to pay the other party's legal costs. Hope flickered in my chest. "You really think we can win this?" "I don't think, I know. The question isn't whether you'll win. It's how much they'll have to pay you when this is over." Fletcher filed our response 2 days before the deadline. In it, he systematically dismantled every claim my parents had made. He included a copy of the birthday card, highlighted the word gift, and attached a sworn affidavit from me detailing the entire history of the property purchase and renovation. He also included a complete accounting of every dollar I'd spent on the house, $107,000 in total, not counting the mortgage payments. The motion to dismiss argued that my parents had no standing to sue because they had no ownership interest in the property, no written contract, and their own written statement contradicted their claim. The counterclaim demanded they pay my attorney's fees, which were already approaching $8,000. I thought that might be the end of it. I hoped they'd see the evidence, realize they had no case, and drop the whole thing. Instead, their attorney doubled down. He filed a response claiming the birthday card was just a formality and that everyone in the family understood the house was meant to be shared. He also claimed I had verbally agreed to let Aurelia have the house when she got married. It was such an obvious lie that I actually laughed when Fletcher read it to me over the phone. Verbally agreed? I didn't even know Colton existed until 8 months ago. How could I have agreed to give her a house for a marriage I didn't know was happening? "Exactly," Fletcher said. "They're grasping at straws, but it means we're going to court. The judge will need to hear both sides before dismissing the case. Be prepared for this to get ugly. Family lawsuits often do." He wasn't kidding about ugly. My parents' attorney sent discovery requests demanding all my financial records, employment history, and personal correspondence. They wanted every text message, every email, every conversation I'd had about the house with anyone. It was a fishing expedition, pure and simple, hopping to find something, anything, they could twist to support their false narrative. Fletcher objected to most of it as overly broad and irrelevant, but we still had to produce some documents. I handed over mortgage statements, property tax records, and renovation receipts. I provided copies of text messages with contractors and emails about renovation plans. Everything showed exactly what I'd been saying all along. This was my house, my project, my investment. The court date was set for 6 weeks out. In the meantime, the family pressure intensified. Aurelia posted on social media about how some people value houses over family, with a crying emoji. Francine called my workplace, trying to speak to my supervisor about what a troubled young woman I was. Bernard showed up at the house twice, demanding we talk this out like adults, which really meant he wanted me to cave to their demands without the inconvenience of a trial. I stopped answering their calls. I documented every attempt they made to contact me. Fletcher said it showed a pattern of harassment that could help our case if needed. The day before the trial, Fletcher called with news. They want to settle. My heart leaped. Settle how? They're willing to drop the lawsuit if you pay them back the $15,000. No interest, no attorney's fees. They walk away, you keep the house. Everyone moves on. I thought about it for exactly 3 seconds. No. Are you sure? Going to trial is risky, even when you have a strong case. Judges can be unpredictable. I'm sure. They tried to steal my house, then they sued me with completely fabricated claims, and now they've cost me $8,000 in attorney's fees. If I pay them $15,000 and they walk away, they still win. They get money they're not entitled to, and I'm out $23,000 total. No, we go to trial. I want a judgment on the record saying they were wrong. Fletcher was quiet for a moment. Okay, I respect that. Just be prepared. Trial can be emotionally difficult, especially when it's family. The trial was held in a small courtroom that felt too intimate for the stakes involved. Judge Eleanora Pemberton presided, a woman in her early 60s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. My parents sat on one side with their attorney, Marcus Whitmore, a man who looked uncomfortable with his own case. I sat on the other side with Fletcher, my stomach in knots. The proceedings started with opening statements. Whitmore went first, painting a picture of devoted parents who'd helped their daughter buy a house with the understanding it would be available for family use. He talked about family values and mutual support, and how I was violating the spirit of their gift by refusing to help my sister. Then Fletcher stood up. Your Honor, this case is very simple. The plaintiffs gave the defendant a birthday gift of $15,000. They wrote on the birthday card in their own handwriting that it was a gift. The defendant used that gift, along with $30,000 of her own money, as a down payment on a house. She then spent the next 3 years paying the mortgage and putting over $100,000 of her own money into renovating the property. The house is in her name alone. She owes no debt to the plaintiffs, and they have no ownership interest in the property. This lawsuit is an attempt to punish the defendant for refusing to simply hand over her house to her sister. It has no legal merit whatsoever. Judge Pemberton looked at both attorneys. Mr. Whitmore, I've reviewed your complaint and the defendant's motion to dismiss. I have to say, the birthday card is quite clear. How do you respond to the written evidence that your clients specifically called this money a gift? Whitmore shifted uncomfortably. Your Honor, the card was merely a formality. My clients maintain there was a verbal understanding between the parties that the house would be considered family property. A verbal understanding, the judge repeated, her tone skeptical. And when exactly was this understanding reached? At the time the loan was given, Your Honor. So 3 years ago. And in those 3 years, how many times did your clients mention this alleged understanding to the defendant? Whitmore consulted his notes. The issue came up recently when the defendant's sister became engaged and needed housing. That's not what I asked, Judge Pemberton said sharply. In the 3 years between giving this money and filing this lawsuit, how many times did your clients tell the defendant that she was expected to share or transfer the property? Well, it was understood, Your Honor. It didn't need to be said explicitly. Judge Pemberton turned to me. Ms. Carrington, did you ever have any conversation with your parents about sharing this property or giving it to your sister? I stood up, my voice steadier than I expected. No, Your Honor. Not until they came to my house 6 weeks ago and demanded I move out so my sister could have it. Before that, they'd never mentioned anything about the house being family property or available for anyone else's use. They visited occasionally, they knew I was renovating it, and they never said a word about having any expectations or claims on it. The judge made a note. And you've been paying the mortgage yourself? Yes, Your Honor. Every payment has come from my personal bank account. I have statements showing all 37 months of payments. The plaintiffs didn't co-sign on the mortgage. No, Your Honor. The mortgage is in my name only. The bank approved me based solely on my income and credit. Judge Pemberton looked at my parents. Mr. and Mrs. Carrington, is it true that you told your daughter this $15,000 was a birthday gift? Francine started crying on cue. Bernard cleared his throat. Your Honor, we thought our daughter understood that family helps family. We didn't think we needed to spell out that when her sister needed the house, she would make it available. But you specifically wrote the word gift on the birthday card. It was a gift, but with the understanding. With what understanding? The judge interrupted. Be specific. What exactly did you tell your daughter when you gave her this money? Bernard faltered. We told her we were proud of her, that we wanted to help with the house. Did you tell her you expected anything in return? Not in so many words, but... Did you, or did you not tell her you expected this house to be available for your younger daughter? Silence. Mr. Carrington, answer the question. No, Bernard finally admitted. We didn't say that specifically. Did you tell her the money was a loan that needed to be repaid? Another painful pause. No. Judge Pemberton removed her glasses and rubbed the bridge of her nose. Let me make sure I understand this correctly. You gave your daughter money as a birthday gift. You wrote on the card that it was a gift. You didn't tell her it was a loan. You didn't tell her you expected anything in return. She used that money, along with her own funds, to buy a house in her name alone. She's been making all the mortgage payments herself. She's put over $100,000 of her own money into renovating the property. And now, 3 years later, you're claiming she owes you the money back because you've decided your younger daughter needs that specific house. When she put it like that, the absurdity of their case was crystal clear. Your Honor, Whitmore interjected, there's also the matter of the defendant's refusal to help her family in a time of need. Mr. Whitmore, Judge Pemberton said coldly, this is a court of law, not a family therapy session. Whether or not the defendant chooses to help her sister is a moral question, not a legal one. The legal question is simple. Do your clients have any legitimate claim to this property? And based on everything I've heard today, the answer is no. She put her glasses back on and looked at her notes. The birthday card clearly establishes that the $15,000 was a gift, not a loan. There is no written contract establishing any terms of repayment or shared ownership. The defendant has provided extensive documentation showing she is the sole owner and sole financial contributor to the property. The plaintiffs have provided nothing but their assertion that there was some vague verbal understanding, which they never communicated to the defendant until they decided they wanted the property for someone else. Judge Pemberton looked directly at my parents. Mr. and Mrs. Carrington, I don't know what you were thinking when you filed this lawsuit, but it is completely without merit. Your daughter did nothing wrong. She accepted a gift you freely gave her, and she used it exactly as intended, to help purchase a home. That you now regret giving her that gift, or that you wish to reclaim it for another purpose, is not a legal basis for a lawsuit. She turned to Fletcher. Mr. Garrison, your motion to dismiss is granted. Furthermore, I'm awarding attorney's fees to the defendant. This lawsuit was frivolous and appears to have been filed in bad faith as a way to pressure the defendant into giving up her property. The plaintiffs are ordered to pay the defendant's reasonable attorney's fees within 30 days. The gavel came down with a sharp crack that felt like vindication. My parents looked stunned. Aurelia, who'd been sitting in the gallery, burst into tears and fled the courtroom. Whitmore gathered his papers quickly, clearly eager to escape. Francine turned to stare at me with such hatred in her eyes that it actually made me step back. This isn't over, Bernard said as they left. You've destroyed this family, Thessaly. I hope you're happy. But it was over. The judgment was entered that same day. My parents were ordered to pay $8,467 in attorney's fees. Fletcher filed a lien against their property to ensure payment. They had 30 days to pay or face additional legal consequences. They paid on day 29, with a check that arrived by certified mail and no accompanying note. In the weeks that followed, I heard through extended family that Aurelia and Colton had found a nice townhouse to rent. Apparently, once they actually looked at their budget and financing options, they realized they could afford more than they'd thought. Funny how that worked. My Aunt Delphine, who'd sent me that nasty text, called to apologize once she heard the full story from someone who'd been at the trial. "I can't believe they lied to us like that," she said. "They made it sound like you were being cruel for no reason. I'm sorry I believed them without hearing your side." A few other relatives reached out with similar apologies. Some didn't. I learned to live with that. The people who wanted to believe the worst of me without asking for my side of the story weren't people I needed in my life anyway. My parents never apologized. We haven't spoken since the trial. They didn't invite me to Aurelia's wedding. I didn't expect them to. Sometimes I walk through my house, my beautiful home that I saved and fought for, and I think about how much it cost me. Not in money. The attorney's fees were returned, and the house is worth far more than I paid for it, but in family relationships. In the fantasy that my parents loved me unconditionally. In the sister I used to have, before I realized she saw me as a resource rather than a person. It was worth it, though. Every penny, every painful court appearance, every hateful message. Because this house isn't just a building. It's proof that I can stand up for myself. It's evidence that I won't be bullied or manipulated, even by the people who raised me. It's a foundation, literally and figuratively, for the life I want to build on my own terms. Reverie came over last weekend, and we sat on my back deck watching the sunset. The deck was one of my final renovation projects, a beautiful cedar structure that cost $6,000 and 3 weeks of hard work. "You did good, Thess," she said, raising her wine glass in a toast. "Not everyone would have had the spine to fight back like you did." I clinked my glass against hers. I didn't have a choice. It was fight or lose everything I'd worked for. "You always have a choice. You chose to stand up for yourself. That takes courage." Maybe she's right. I'd never thought of myself as particularly courageous. But I suppose there's a kind of courage in saying no, in holding boundaries, in refusing to be swept along by other people's expectations and demands. My house is quiet now, peaceful in a way it never was when I was constantly bracing for the next family ambush. I've started dating someone, a man named Sable who thinks it's impressive that I renovated the whole place myself. We've talked about the future, about what it might look like to build something together. And sometimes, when I'm sitting in my living room, looking at the walls I painted and the floors I installed and the home I created, I think about that moment when my mother told me to pack my things. How small she tried to make me feel. How certain she was that I would fold under the pressure of family expectations. I'm glad I proved her wrong. This house is mine. The deed says so. The bank statements say so. The court judgment says so. But more importantly, my own sense of self-worth says so. I built this. I earned this. I fought for this. And nobody, not my parents, not my sister, not anyone can take it away from me. That's a foundation you can build a life on.